Okay, and again, hi everybody. My name is Kevin Ezell. I'm Senior Director of Graduate Admission here in the College of Business. So my role is overseeing our admissions process for our programs, specifically our MBA programs, as well as our specialty master's programs. And Lehigh College of Business also offers a PhD in business and economics as well too. So the topic of today's presentation is really digging into our most recent outcomes data. And this is something that's actually publicly available through our website. Lehigh actually does a very nice job reporting out data of our graduate programs. But again, I kind of condensed everything into program by program format, so we can actually kind of go through and talk a little bit about some of the outcomes that the average student in any of our given program would typically expect to see. And I'll weave in some stories in there as well too about students just from my experiences. So the easiest way to do this is typically, I'm going to be presenting it to you. If you have questions at any point, some of you are using the chat room already, which is great. So I would encourage you to continue to do that. And I typically like to kind of know who I'm talking to. So if you don't mind first, if you could just kind of put in the chat room maybe a quick introduction, your name, and maybe where you're zooming from today. The most interesting thing that I like about Lehigh in my 6.5 years here is that we attract students locally here in Pennsylvania, but we see students from all around the world interested in our programs and attending our programs. So I'll give everybody a minute if you're so inclined to just kind of maybe type in the chat room your name and where you're coming from today. And if you want to type in the program of interest that you're considering here at Lehigh, that would be super helpful as well too. So just give people a minute. It's okay if people don't want to do that as well. But I just I'll start the presentation and kind of see welcome, see Nigeria. And again, feel free if people want to put if they're interested in our programs. We have a number of different programs. Full-time MBA, we call it our one-year MBA. Our Flex MBA, which is kind of our part-time online MBA program. Hey, Alex, Emmanuel, welcome. Juliet, welcome. We also have our specialty master's programs, which we'll go through. Those would be our master's in business analytics, financial engineering program, master's in management, master's in applied economics, as well as our PhD program. So good to see everybody. Dan, good to see you as well too. Welcome. So let me jump into the presentation. And again, feel free to ask any questions along the way. I may not stop on the spot and answer it, but I'll make sure when I get through the presentation to come back and handle any questions that you've asked or want to ask at that point. So again, because we definitely have a global audience here today, I always like to start with where Lehigh is, right? That's typically one of the big things. So Lehigh University, we're located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which the easiest way to explain it is we're about a 90-minute drive west of New York City and a 60-minute drive north of Philadelphia. We're in an area called the Lehigh Valley, which is actually one of the fastest growing areas in the state of Pennsylvania, and actually one of the typically listed as one of the top places to live, not only in Pennsylvania, but here in the United States as well, too. It's a very safe city. And what students tend to like about Lehigh are a couple things. Number one, it's a highly ranked university here in the United States. I think internationally, people sometimes are aware of Lehigh, but not as much as here in the United States. So we are ranked as a top 50 national university on the U.S. News and World Report National University Rankings. We were actually ranked by the Wall Street Journal this past year as the 15th top university in the United States. And then we have program rankings as well too, which I can talk to you a little bit about. But the program definitely is held in high regard here in the United States and internationally as well too. But again, from a proximity standpoint, especially for our full-time students that are likely going to be relocating, possibly from another area to the Lehigh Valley, the proximity to New York and Philadelphia is really what is attractive to a lot of students. That when you're factoring in full-time studies, cost of living obviously is part of that. And if we do have students that are interested in our part-time, our Flex MBA, what I typically tell students is why that is an online program and it's also an evening program. sometimes people think online that students are coming from everywhere. The reality is that in our Flex MBA program, really about 80 to 85% of our students live within a 100-mile radius, or about an hour drive of our campus. But again, that just gives you kind of a sense for those maybe outside of the United States, kind of where Lehigh University is located. And again, I'm not going to talk a lot about this today. You can research it on your own. But if you're not familiar with Bethlehem, it's a historic city here in the United States. We were actually, our city center was actually just named a World Heritage Site, part of it, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, making it only the 22nd World Heritage Site in the United States. So that just happened a few months ago. We're super excited about that. But it's a really nice downtown for a small city, and again, with access to those large metropolitan areas. We're a city known for our festivals, parks. You can see we have the largest free music festival in the country. I always like to mention that. And again, it's also known as the Christmas city. So we attract a lot of tourism for a smaller city. Again, as far as the programs go, I'll just run through these again quick with specific start dates that some of you may be targeting. Again, our full-time MBA, which is a full-time residential on-campus MBA, we call our One MBA program. And it's really designed as a one-year residential experience on our campus. Typically, students enrolled in that program, it's normally a cohort of about 20 to 35 students enrolled in that program that will really stay together as a unit through that one-year duration. The one-year program does require separation from your employer. So this is kind of a one-year commitment to getting your MBA and then returning to the workforce. All of these programs, with the exception of our Flex MBA, because that is a part-time program, have STEM designation options for any international students, just to make you aware of that. But our One MBA, again, a smaller full-time program, 20 to 35 students on campus residential. Our Flex MBA is actually our largest program here at Lehigh, and it's sort of a combination of our part-time evening MBA as well as a live synchronous MBA. Typically, all the students in this program are in the United States, working in the United States, and looking to kind of just go to the MBA part-time and complete it in anywhere from 2 to 4 years. So that program has a lot of flexibility because people are kind of juggling work, family, and education. That program, the One MBA, only begins once per year. So our application is currently open. We begin in late June of 2025, and then those students will expect to graduate between May and August of 2026, depending on if they select a concentration or not. So somewhere between 11 and 13 months. The Flex MBA, because of the flexibility, has 3 starts per year. We have all of those applications open at the moment. So with our focus right now being on January, spring, but students can apply for spring, summer, and fall. Our Master's in Management, again, is a full-time on-campus residential program, and it's really designed for early career students. Our MBA programs really require 2 years of professional experience after your bachelor's degree before you would begin. With the averages for the One MBA, it's typically about 4 to 5 years average experience before starting the MBA. And the Flex MBA is a little bit closer to 8 or 9 years. But if you have a minimum of 2 years professional experience, you potentially could qualify for admission to those programs. The specialty masters, starting with the Masters in Management and then below on my screen, those are all mostly designed for early career programs. So Masters in Management is pretty much students that are graduating with a bachelor's degree from a non-business major. So think of the engineering student or the psychology student or the biology student that realizes they want to get some business acumen before they enter the workforce. That would be the Masters in Management program. Our Masters in Business Analytics, same thing. It's really designed for students with up to 2 years professional experience. So we see some crossover sometimes where students are interested in business analytics because it's a very hot area right now. But if you're over 2 years experience, we would actually direct you to our full-time one-year MBA program, which offers a business analytics concentration. If you're at or under the 2 years, then we would say the Master's in Business Analytics specialty degree. That program is full-time. It has a number of different starts per year. And that program typically has anywhere from 30 to 50 students in at any given point. And it's right now, it's a very hot area that we're seeing. We also have our financial engineering program, which is a super quantitative program, and we'll talk a little bit about the outcomes of that program. But that program actually has, for the specialty masters, it definitely has the highest starting salary as far as the program outcomes, which we'll talk about. But again, it's a very specific student who's going to be looking for that. I see some questions coming in. Let me stop for a second. Joe had a good question here, looking to make a pivot. Do you experience folks trying to take the same route for the full-time MBA? Absolutely. I told you I would weave some stories into this program. So, while I say the average work experience in the 1-year MBA might be around 4 to 5 years experience, we've had a number of people with the level experience that you had that said, look, I'm at a point in my career where I can step back, I can pause for a year and get this done to make that career pivot. I had somebody who was actually a associate VP at a large multinational bank in New York City that took a pause for a year and did that exact, actually pretty similar route to that. I think he had an accounting background and made a pivot. So yeah, absolutely. And we've definitely had people with much more work experience than that kind of go into the program and do it because it's the return on investment, right? It's like a lot of people in the MBA space want to explore the full-time experience, but the reality is like stepping away from 2 years of work is just not a reality. And for somebody with that level of experience, they typically don't need an internship to probably make the pivot. It's you have enough work experience that it's really just using the MBA to help you make that pivot. So yeah, and what I'll do at the end of this too, I'll share my email address. I'm always happy to meet with people one-on-one. We can set up a Zoom call and talk very specifically about your particular background and situation. Applied economics, again, a full-time program. Um, uh, on campus, residential, STEM designated, and then our PhD program. The PhD actually only has an intake every 2 years. So we currently don't have the application open for that because our next intake for the PhD would be fall of 2026. So for students considering a PhD at Lehigh in business and economics, that application will open probably in about August or September of 2025, and then you would have till December of 2025 to apply. So today's presentation is definitely going to be a little bit more focused on MBA and Masters. So the good thing is this data is publicly available on our website. Lehigh does a great job really reporting out data of our programs. And you can see our data that's currently existing right now is the class of 2023. We're still in the phase of collecting data from our students that graduated in May or August of 2024, and we'll release that data a little bit later. And I always say with every point of data, you take it with a grain of salt. And the reason I say that is at Lehigh, a lot of our programs are small by design. So there's a lot of ebbs and flows sometimes with the starting salaries. And, the two things that are obviously going to drive the salary, number one is obviously Lehigh, right? The brand, the reputation of the MBA program or the specialty master's program and the university itself. But also your work experience sometimes is going to drive that as well too. So somebody maybe with a little bit less work experience, and you'll see this in our full-time MBA program compared to our part-time MBA, you are going to see kind of different variations of salary. And that doesn't mean that somebody that's interested in a full-time MBA obviously can't exceed that salary. We see that happen all the time. But I'm really just reporting out averages to you today and giving you some specific situations. Again, you can look go.lehigh.edu/grad outcomes to get as much detail as you want. And again, here's just some data about kind of how they're pulling data, where the data is coming from. So Lehigh in general has 1,700 graduate students at any given time amongst the 5 colleges here at the university. We have about 8,000 students total at the university with 80 different graduate programs across Lehigh and over 30,000 just graduate alumni. 13 online programs, which again, Flex MBA is actually the largest graduate program at Lehigh. And you can see we have a rich tradition of graduate degrees dating back to the late 1800s for both graduate and PhD degrees. So let's talk a little bit about overall outcomes first. So when you look at all of that data combined, right, our full-time MBA, our part-time MBA, our specialty master's programs, the number that really stands out to me the most is that 95%. That 95% of students are employed, continuing their education, or pursuing military or volunteer experience. And those data points are consistent with how MBA and specialty master's programs report. The majority obviously are employed. There may be a few that are maybe doing a second degree right after this, but the majority are going right back into the workforce or in the case of Flex, continuing on into the workforce. You can see there 87% technically employed, 6% continuing their education in a likely a dual degree situation. You can also see top industries. Lehigh has really good reputation in the financial services industry, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, as well as consulting, technology. And I think what's interesting is 41% select other. So when we looked at that data probably a year or two ago, technology was probably much higher. But as some of you may know, like technology had layoffs for a while. So students were kind of making pivots in the full-time programs to kind of maybe pick some different areas or different sectors. So you can see manufacturing, transportation and logistics, CPG, hospitality, all of those fall into that other bucket as well too. You can see some of the top employers for our programs: Amazon, National Basketball Association, Pfizer, Verizon, Merck, J&J, Comcast, just to name a few of those companies. And Amazon's an interesting one, especially for our full-time MBA students. We have a lot of interest in Amazon. For a small program, we've had a number of students go on to MBA level roles at Amazon. We've also had some of our specialty master's students go into specific roles at Amazon as well too. When you start to break it down a little bit more, as I mentioned at the beginning, our full-time MBA tends to attract a younger population, and it also attracts a very diverse population across the globe because people are attracted to the idea of studying in the United States for a year. So for international students that are here, I'm always very prideful of this number because typically at least half of the full-time MBA program are international students. It's historically who we've attracted. Some of that is due to the STEM designation of our program, meaning that there is more quantitative components to it than a non-STEM MBA degree. And there's exceptions to this, right? We have students that are getting, I just had a student actually go to Amazon last year and had a $175,000 offer with significant bonuses, significant stock options. So again, I'm kind of reporting the averages to you today. I just met with a student yesterday in the one MBA program who's going into a consulting role, who's probably about $40,000 above that base salary with some bonuses as well too. So again, reporting to the averages, you can see almost 60% had multiple job offers in the one-year MBA program. Our full-time programs have a lot of career services focused around it. Our Flex does as well too, but Flex, because it's part-time, we kind of let the students raise their hand and let us know when they need help. With the full-time programs, because people have kind of taken that pause in their career and they said like, look, I'm focused on a pivot or moving forward with a change in my role, and we have you 5 days a week. It's a little bit different, right? But for all of our students, we'll offer sessions. We'll bring in experts to do case interviewing workshops if you're interested in consulting, or even large multinational companies outside of consulting will do case interviews. We just brought a really famous author, Steve Dalton, in, who wrote The 2-Hour Job Search. It's a great book if people haven't read it before, especially for graduate students. We had him come in and do a workshop for our students. We'll do interviews, mock interviews. Those are typically geared to our full-time students. But again, for our Flex students, we're definitely happy to do career coaching and help you, make that pivot in your career. Or if you're looking to stay within your company, leverage the MBA to kind of take that next step. And you'll see in the Flex data as well too that is actually happening in the program. Back to the one MBA, you can see again a wide range of industries, financial services being the top area. Lehigh just we have a Wall Street Council that's open to both undergraduate and graduate students. It's made up of Lehigh alums who we had 300 people here on our campus for networking this past weekend in the financial services industry. So Lehigh again has very strong connections to financial services. Technology, see a lot of students are still going into technology, consulting, government, and some other smaller areas as well too. With about a third of the students ending up in, from a function standpoint, general management, as well as consulting type roles. And you can see finance and accounting is represented as well too. Here's more of a historical sampling. I like to go back a couple years for this because it's a small program by design, so you're not going to get a ton of data points. So, companies like Axtria, which some people may not be familiar with, but Axtria is actually a multinational healthcare analytics company located about an hour from our campus that we have a number of students working at. Amazon, BNP Paribas, Charles Schwab, PwC. We have some people doing some M&A work at PwC that graduated from the one-year MBA program, and some different outliers like the United Nations. Lehigh has a unique relationship with the UN, so that's why that is listed on there. And you could see anything from data analysts, financial managers, general managers, senior associates, senior product managers are the typical types of roles that are coming out of the full-time one-year program. So let's talk about Flex. And again, we're just going to cover each very quickly, and there's more data on our website about this. So again, Flex MBA, typically students, not always, but on average, 8 to 10 years professional experience. These are students that are typically not leaving their job while they're in the program, that they're looking to possibly move up within their company, or they're looking to maybe change companies at some point. But I think we see less kind of career pivoters in the Flex program. It's definitely possible to do that. But for the most part, the average student is looking to probably stay within their company or not make a drastic change. So starting salary, in my opinion, doesn't really matter in this program because if the people have starting salaries of $130,000, that's not much of an increase. So for me, the biggest average or the biggest data point for the Flex program is the average salary increase that a student would see from beginning the program to the end of the program. And we measure that every single cohort. So even though the students may have a little bit of different paths, we have a way that we measure this. And the average salary increase for somebody doing the part-time MBA, which typically is about 2 to 4 years, depending on a student's individual timeline, is that the average student would see about a $38,000 increase in their salary from beginning to end of the Flex MBA program. And when we say end, we typically measure data 90 days after graduation. That's typically an industry standard that a lot of graduate schools will follow. In addition to that, you can see sign-on bonus would be more if they were switching companies during that period of time. But what's interesting is in the Flex program, even though the majority of students may be staying with their company, a lot of them are getting possible offers. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're taking it, but they're seeing some opportunities just by starting the MBA. And some of that could be networking within the program, or some are deliberately looking to kind of make a change from their company. But again, that $38,000 for me is the most reflective number for that particular program because it is part-time. You can see healthcare is actually very well represented. We do have people in this program from Merck, Johnson & Johnson, Sanofi has a presence in our area here as well too. Energy is well represented, as well as financial services, manufacturing, and technology. In addition to that, different functions of students are general management. We do see a number of engineers and people with technical backgrounds coming into both Flex and the one MBA. It's not required, obviously, but an MBA tends to make sense for somebody with a technical background that maybe is looking to expand their understanding of business at a higher organizational level. So that is definitely a popular combination, engineering and an MBA program. I'm going to stop for a second. I just want to see here if there were any questions that came in. It looks like just some more introductions, which is great. Again, feel free if people have questions about anything. Happy to stop every couple minutes and make sure I address them. Now we're going to get into our smaller programs, our specialty master's programs. So this, again, early career, typically students with no work experience, maybe up to 1 or 2 years professional experience. So the cleanest way for us to kind of pull this data, because these are smaller programs and they're similar programs, similar profile students going into these programs, is we kind of pull these programs together to give you a little bit more accurate data. So when you look across these three programs, the average starting salary is almost $80,000 for somebody pretty much, very, very early in their career. Again, we do have both U.S. citizens and international students in these programs, and these programs have that STEM designation for international students. You can see the maximum salary is obviously a little bit lower than the MBA students would see, again, because everybody is a little bit more early career in these programs. But again, almost half the students are seeing multiple job offers while they're in the program. And the one program that you don't see there, which we're going to talk about shortly, is our financial engineering program, which, number one, it's not fair to lump that into these numbers because it would kind of inflate really what the true numbers look like. But we are going to call that program out separately and look at it momentarily. But again, for our master's in management, it's a program designed for the non-business undergraduate degree holder with 0 to 1 years work experience that realizes I really probably need some business acumen before I enter the workforce, or they're struggling to get a job in their field and realize they want to go into business. You can see a lot of these students, they're going into consulting, marketing, general management. While this program does have a STEM designation, you're going to have accounting, you're going to have finance, statistics type classes. It's not as quantitative as like a master's in business analytics program. It's almost like a mini MBA, I guess is the best way to put it, that it's a broader approach to business, but it's just the students don't have that level of professional work experience to kind of lean on in the classroom. You can see some really interesting historical companies that these students have gone to just for masters in management. Bloomberg, we've had a number of people at Bloomberg, American Express, Edison Energy, Morgan Stanley, just to name a few of those. But yeah, really, really interesting program, again, just for the student that really doesn't have that business background. And again, you can see these roles are typically a little bit more early career focused, analyst roles, research associate roles, that you're not seeing a lot of directors yet because they're kind of early on in their career. But the benefit of that for anybody here that's interested in masters in management or watching on a recording is, it's not easy to kind of start your career and then pause your career to come back and do an MBA at some point, or another type of graduate program. So this is more the idea of very early in your career, you may have a little more flexibility to do that. And then this is obviously going to accelerate your career. What we're not talking about today is 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Lehigh does not track that data at this time, but we know when you look at national data as far as graduate student, MBA graduate student data, there's a lot of data points out there showing the value of a graduate degree over a longer time period. I included this slide because I think this speaks to kind of the network that students will have. So you can see there that Handshake, the alumni network, internet job postings a lot of times is through our internal resources that we have here, job fairs, on-campus interviews, things like that are generating potential leads for students in this particular program. But again, sometimes students in these early career specialty masters, they don't know the importance of networking and how kind of the hidden job exists out there and how critical it is to have referrals when you're applying to larger companies. And we do that. We actually have in all of these specialty masters programs, we typically will have sometimes professional development as a class in some of these programs to help them understand how to leverage their professional stories and how to put them in the particular type of format that companies are interested in and have confidence in telling these stories and showing ownership of these stories. The I versus we is critically important in helping you prepare your job search in all of these programs. Our master's in business analytics, you could see there that program, about a third are going into consulting type roles, a third are going in the financial services. We do offer a number of concentrations in this program. It's not required, but there are different concentrations in the business analytics program as well too. Again, that starting salary, $79,000 would be inclusive of Masters in Management and Masters in Business Analytics, as well as Masters in Applied Economics. And then again, you can see Amazon, Axtria, we had mentioned Charles Schwab, EY, Hershey, Pfizer, the MBA. We just had a student from this program. It's like not that I'm not in my dream job now, but she's actually working for the National Football League as a business analytics analyst for the NFL. So we are super excited to see that opportunity for her. And again, a lot of analyst roles, early career type program is how our MSBA program is designed. And I'll mention for our older students that are interested in analytics, again, the 1-year MBA with the business analytics concentration will be your best bet. That's typically where students with more than 2 years that are interested in business analytics would go. And if you're a part-time student, Flex MBA also has a business analytics concentration as well too. And again, economics, you can see a lot of students in that program. It's our one of our smaller programs are going into consulting. We do have a number of students in that program will continue on to a PhD, sometimes here at Lehigh, sometimes at another university as well too. So that's why you see higher education kind of creeping up on that particular group there. And then in addition for Masters in Applied Economics, Alibaba, EY, some international multinational banks are listed on there, KPMG as well too. And again, consultants, data engineers, financial assistants, risk consultants are just a sampling of actual jobs that some of these students had. And I mentioned our financial engineering program. Again, you can find all of this data on our website, but the financial engineering program is probably our most quantitative program. It's an interdisciplinary program that really is looking for students with math or statistics degrees, um, any type of quantitative degree. Finance is okay, but you may need to take some prerequisites. Computer science, engineering, those are typically students come in the best positions. But these are students that want to get into like quantitative trading, working on Wall Street, quantitative roles in financial services or consulting. This, again, it's pretty specialized. It has really good outcomes. We have students that have no work experience. We have students that have 5 years, 10 years work experience in this program. We've seen the starting salary be anywhere from 90,000 to 120, 130,000 in some given years. But it's small. We typically bring in maybe 10 to 15 students per year in this program. But if you have an interest in the quantitative side of finance and you have an acumen for that, this could be a program that you would be interested in because it is very much in demand when you look at that starting salary. And then again, our PhD program, most students in that program are looking to go on to work in academia, typically as a professor. We are seeing more and more trends of PhD students looking to work in industry as well too, and Lehigh can help position you for that. Our PhD programs are actually fully funded for 4 years with an option of possible funding for a 5th year if you would need a 5th year of that program. But again, our application is not open for that program at this point. Some other things I'll mention is admissions requirements. So if you are interested in researching the programs a little bit more, deciding if you think it might be a good fit for you, I always like to run through what's required of you. We have no application fee because for some students, applications can actually still cost money because you may need to get some other materials for us. So no application fee for this year. We require a 1 to 2 page essay question. You would be prompted of the essay when you start your application, and you would just upload that document to us. We'd ask for a resume or a CV. This would typically be 1 to 2 pages. If you're an international student, I would encourage you to kind of look at a US template for resumes. It's a little bit cleaner for us to review it because obviously every country is a little bit different. But we want to see your work experience, even if it's just internships or if you're an MBA student. We want to see your level of experience and ownership of what you've done and the companies that you've worked for. Career progression is really important for the MBA programs for us to see things like that. So make sure your resume is kind of up to date and refreshed. You can upload that. GMAT or GRE, it's probably one of the most common questions that we get. We are optional for all of our programs. What I typically tell applicants, and I try to be very transparent with this, is the majority of students are not submitting a GMAT or GRE at this point. The students that tend to do it might be the super competitive students that are looking at maybe 8 to 10 schools and are looking for high financial aid packages. It doesn't mean you cannot get a good financial aid package without a GMAT or GRE. That is absolutely possible. But, it's these students that maybe are looking at some of the top programs, say the top 25 MBA programs in the country. They tend to sometimes be a little bit more stringent on GMATs or GREs. The other student or applicant that might potentially need a GMAT or GRE would be somebody that we think has a lot of potential. Maybe they've done well in their career, or they're an interesting candidate, but when we look at their GPA from their undergraduate experience, it's just not kind of at the level of our programs. I would say typically if you're below a 3.0, you might want to talk to me about, do you need a GMAT or GRE? Because a lot of our programs, the average GPA is typically a 3.2 to 3.4. And again, every major is a little bit different, so I tend to not like to generalize this, but I'll put my email address in at the end of this. That would be a really good question to follow up with me on so I could learn about your situation. We don't have a preference if you decided to submit a GMAT or GRE. It's either exam, whatever suits you the best. But again, I would say probably 10 to 15% of our applicants at this point are submitting a GMAT or GRE. So it's not a super common thing that we're seeing. Transcripts. We do require transcripts from any undergraduate or graduate school you've attended previously. This would include, like, if you started at one school and then transferred credits to another school, we would ask you kind of list those schools out individually and then get us a transcript from each school. The good news is they can be unofficial, meaning that if you have access to this, you can upload it into your application, and that is enough for an admission decision. If you're admitted to Lehigh and everything works out, and obviously I hope it does, and you come here, we would give you usually a month or two to get us official transcripts, meaning sent directly from your colleges or universities directly to Lehigh. But we give you some leeway in doing that. For any international students, if you have a transcript in English, that is typically fine. We'll do a preliminary review of your application with what you uploaded, and we will let you know if we would require something a little bit different. But if you don't have a transcript in English, we would need typically some sort of evaluation service, which is on our website to help us kind of figure out and to be able to read your previous academic experience. 2 letters of recommendation for most programs. Our master's in management only requires one, but 2 letters of recommendation. The way that works is you would put your name and your email address, your recommender's name and email address into the application, and it'll fire an email out to them behind the scenes. I always suggest reaching out to your recommender then and saying, hey, can you check your junk folder to make sure this did not go into your junk folder? Because sometimes it does. You can also track this in your application portal. You can hit a button to send a reminder for that. But we will need, for most programs, 2 letters of recommendation. And then for some programs, you may get selected for an admissions interview. That typically would be our one-year MBA program. We do interview some candidates for that program, and also our master's in financial engineering. We will interview some candidates for that program as well too. We'll prompt you for that. There's nothing that you need to do. It's as we start doing a preliminary review of applications, we may ask for an interview. I won't run through all of the deadlines here because I see there are some questions, and that would be a really good time if people do have questions. But you can see at the beginning I had mentioned about different starts for different programs. We do have a number of spring program starts, specifically our specialty masters, applied economics, financial engineering, and business analytics. Typically, December 1st is our deadline for a spring start. If you are an international student, I would encourage you to submit everything by November 15th or earlier, just to give us time from a visa standpoint. For the one MBA, full-time MBA program, that is kind of our one start per year in the summer. So you can see those deadlines there. And again, all of this is on our website, so I would suggest maybe going to the program that you're interested in, finding the admission page, and all of the deadlines are there. Flex obviously has 3 starts per year. If you're here in the United States, you usually have a little bit more time to kind of gather your materials before a program would begin. And again, those are kind of all of the points of the application. For international students, you may or may not need an English proficiency requirement. You can find information on our website. Just find our English proficiency page, and that information would be present in there for you to take a look at. I'm going to stop here. There were 1 or 2 questions that came in. I'm also going to put my email address here in the chat room for all of you. And for those watching on a recording, in case you can't see the chat room, KJE318 at lehigh.edu. Again, KJE318 at lehigh.edu. Feel free to contact me directly if you want to set up a one-on-one appointment. Always happy to do that, just to talk through your situation and talk through the program in a little bit more detail. There was a question about a WES transcript. Yep, so WES, World Education Services, for any international students is really the gold standard of course evaluations. That can be very helpful for us. So if you have a course-by-course evaluation through WES or SpanTran, you can just upload it to us for now as an unofficial evaluation. And then again, if you decided to come to Lehigh and were admitted, we would give you time to send an official WES course-by-course evaluation to us. Joe had asked about an internship. Yeah, that's actually a great question. So, with the 1-year MBA, it really is designed as a 1-year MBA, but we also realize that for certain students, flexibility might be needed. So if you look on our website, we actually, on the 1MBA website, we have something called the internship trailer. And again, I would say out of, let's say if 20 to 25 students graduate a year, 3 to 4 MBA students will do an internship. And that can be sometimes for somebody doing a pivot. What's interesting about that is the reason I don't talk about it a lot is it's not what the majority of students do, but my philosophy is if it helps one student, it helps one student, right? So what that typically can look like is that you may have to graduate a little bit later. It depends on, we'd want to do research when you get here on the types of internships you're looking at. So let's talk about Amazon, because we've had a student do this at Amazon. And I talk about Amazon just because I know the most about Amazon and their hiring process. So we had a student a few years ago who was an entrepreneur, came to us. He was actually an international student, came to us and realized that he was applying to full-time MBA roles, product manager roles at Amazon. He did not get an offer to do that. He saw that once Amazon does their specific MBA hiring for the next year, they open their internships up. So he did an internship. He did an internship at Amazon. He got hired. He moved to Seattle for the summer, that second summer that he was here. And what he did was he extended his graduation to December. What the reason he did that was a few reasons. He needed to take 1 or 2 classes and needed to dedicate his entire summer to being successful at Amazon. But he also looked at Amazon's hiring process. And for their interns, their return offers for an internship stipulated that a student needed to graduate in December or May or August of the following year. So based on that, he positioned himself and he worked with his advisor to do that. So Joe, to answer your question, can you use the 1-year program to pivot from accounting to finance? It's definitely possible. I'd probably want to see your background a little bit more. So I would definitely say, like, let's set up a one-on-one to talk through this a little bit. I may talk to we have a director of career services in our office to just kind of get her opinion on it as well too. I would just I wouldn't want to put you down the internship path if we didn't think it was necessary. And the nice thing is, like, you don't have to make that decision. Like, if you ultimately decide that Lehigh is the right fit for you, I always say the internship is in your back pocket. So you don't have to come in and say, look, you come in with the mindset of a one MBA student and you start doing your research and saying, I'm looking at full-time roles, I'm looking at internships. And through your research, through your informational interviews with people in the Lehigh network, you'll be able to figure out pretty quickly, am I going to need that internship or not? Or maybe you're applying to both types of internships and full-time roles. You don't have to decide really until November of that first year you're in the program, do I maybe want to consider extending my program a little bit? You really could wait until late January. We wouldn't advise that, but you have some time to figure it all out. So yeah, we should talk definitely one-on-one to see what's going to make the most sense. And I can even connect you to that alum that I was thinking about that I think he would give you some good context. We had another question about, can you apply for two programs? Trying to consider between financial engineering or business analytics. So technically you can. I don't love that typically because I think it sends kind of we look at applications across the board. So if we see people applying to multiple programs at the same time, it's hard to kind of gauge what they're most interested in or what they're most serious about. So what I would say is maybe apply to your most relevant application first. We typically will review applications before our deadline. So you would likely know if you were admitted to, let's say, financial engineering was your top choice and business analytics was your backup plan. You would likely know an admission decision on the first program, and then you could make the decision. But there's not really benefits to doing that from like a scholarship standpoint. We're definitely looking across the board at what programs students are applying to. So hopefully that helps answer your question. Um, Harsh had asked about international student, but holding a degree from the United States. You meet our English proficiency requirement. If you completed a degree in the United States and a number of different countries that we have listed on our website, you would be exempted from that policy. So the policy is really driven by where you attended school and how many years you attended school. So if there's a student that studied 2 years in China and then did 2 years in the United States, unfortunately, that's not enough. It has to be at least 3 years in the United States or an English-speaking country. And we recognize that English is spoken in many countries around the world. So India is a great example. We do not require if you studied in India and did at least 3 years of an English studied in English, not an English degree, but it was in English, you may not have to submit a English proficiency, and same with a number of countries in Africa as well too. So I'm not going to run through all the countries. Check our website out, and there'll definitely be more information on there. And you can also let me know if you have specific questions about that. I did see I can handle one or two more questions here. Have you admitted students with GPAs lower than a 3.0? We have in certain circumstances. What I would say is that without a GMAT or GRE, we have, but they probably have pretty impeccable work experience with some really interesting companies. And again, maybe they studied engineering, or maybe they studied something very quantitative that we would weigh that a little bit differently. If you studied business, and I'm just using it as an example, and you're below a 3.0, it definitely may benefit you to consider a GMAT or GRE. Again, every scenario is a little bit different, but my general advice is it may not hurt to do that. And you can look, each of our programs on our website has a class profile page. So you can kind of get a sense of maybe the Master's in Management GPA is slightly a little bit lower, but the Flex MBA is a 3.3 or one MBA is a 3.3. And again, I can give you personal advice on that. Happy to help. And then the final question I'm going to take today, and again, happy to meet with all of you one-on-one, is does the one-year MBA have 3-year OPT? Again, for international students, yes. In the one MBA, if you pursue our STEM designated tracks, which are business analytics concentration or supply chain management, those are STEM degrees, which would give you, if you're able to find a job in the US, up to 3 years of OPT. All of our specialty master's programs are STEM designated, so you would have the 3 years of OPT eligibility as well too. Okay, so I think that's a good place to stop for today. I appreciate everybody hanging on the call. We had a good group and a good group of questions. Again, my email address, kje318 at lehigh.edu. Drop me an email. I can get you my calendar and we can find time to talk. Look forward to engaging with you throughout this process. Also, check our website out. We just added something recently where you can actually directly connect with current students enrolled in these programs. So it's not really direct messaging, but usually within a couple hours, our student ambassador will get back to you. And those questions typically are more around not so much admissions or scholarship based, because they're kind of trained not to answer those, that really should be me. But what it's like in the program, what it's like studying at Lehigh, the networking, things like that. So it's always good to talk to others, and we try to make it a little bit convenient through those portals on our website. So thanks again. It's been fun to talk to you, and I hope this isn't the last conversation, and look forward to seeing your application soon. Hope everybody has a great day, and thanks again for all the questions. Take care.